Okay, we'll get started, call the meeting to order. Let's start with the pledge, please, if you could please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the Thursday, November 15th, Town of Riverhead Planning Board meeting. First item on the agenda today is a discussion item for 406 Osborne Avenue. That's the same one as this, I'm gonna open mine up.
Yeah, this is the elevations, I mean, the site plan's in there, but. All right, state your names for the record.
Thomas Kramer, Principal Kramer Consulting Group, 54 North Prince Road, Mills. Robert Gruber, Architect, office at 476 Expressway Drive South, Medford.
All right, so the planning department has received and reviewed revised plans, that were submitted in connection with a preliminary site plan application to develop a vacant parcel of land with a two-story, 9,200 square foot mixed-use building with approximately 3,900 square feet of retail and ground level, and 6 residential apartment units on the upper floor. As per the planning board's direction, the site plan has been revised to show a 16-foot wide one-way access into the site from Pulaski Street, along with the original 24-foot wide two-way access off of Osborne. Traffic circulation using this layout will be much more beneficial to the site. It'll alleviate the issues with garbage collection that I'd identified with the original circulation. All the openings meet the town code requirements for opening widths for single and two-way road access.
Gotta get the plans off the mic.
A light pole has also been added at the request of planning staff near the dumpster enclosure in the northwestern portion of the property. The heights of the proposed fixtures have been identified on the plan. The building-mounted lighting will be 14 feet above grade, and the pole-mounted lighting fixture will be 15 feet above grade, which is compliant with the town code, and the fixtures are dark sky compliant and 3,000 degree Kelvin. The site plan has also been revised to specifically identify the type of vegetation that will be used to screen the dumpster enclosure. That now consists of 12 pyramidal arborvitaes, and the plan has also been tightened up to more clearly identify the landscaped area and how it will be delineated from the parking lot. The site plan has been revised to include more landscaping throughout the site. Buffers are now being proposed along the western and northern property boundaries, and additional landscaping has been proposed around the building and as well as at the foot of the relocated Polish Town sign. The site plan has been revised to identify the location of the proposed bike rack, which will be near the eastern curb cut on Osborne Avenue. The western property boundary, at the request of planning staff, during the site plan review, it was noted that there were some large caliber mature trees along the western boundary. Those trees have been flagged, identified, and shown on the site plan. The plan indicates that 8 of the 9 trees along this boundary are on the subject parcel, with the remaining tree located on the property containing the single-family residence to the west. Due to the proximity of these trees to the property line, the applicant is proposing a 6-foot high stockade fence eastward of the line of trees, as well as a buffer consisting of 24 Leland cypress, which will be located inside the stockade fence. Staff recommends that the existing vegetation, coupled with the stockade fence and additional evergreen plantings, would provide an adequate buffer between the proposed use and the existing single-family residence. Along the northern property boundary, the site plan has been revised to include a 4-foot high post and rail fence along the northern property boundary, as well as a buffer consisting of 38 lime mound spirea. Staff recommends that this buffer is appropriate, being that the parcel to the north is a town-owned parking lot. The plan's been revised to include the 30-foot visibility buffer that's required at intersections, and the site plan shows that there are no obstructions within this area. The plan has also been revised to comply with the 10-foot by 20-foot required parking stall size. However, complying with the size of the parking stalls leaves the site underparked for the proposed use. The use requires a total of 27 stalls, whereas the site plan now only provides 25.
It was 10 by 20?
Correct. And this will require a variance from the zoning board of appeals prior to site plan approval. And lastly, a test hole was provided, and review and comments from the town engineer are pending. So we're back here just before the board. They also did revise elevations, which I know the board had some concerns about the appearance of the building at the last discussion. So we wanted to get the board's opinion on the revisions as well as the updated elevations.
The elevations, actually, since we had the last meeting with the planning board, we went to the architectural. We went to the architectural review board, and went over with the architectural review board, and they made additional recommendations. We've actually revised our plan based on their recommendations. This is what we've come up with on the new plan now. This is the, these are the views that face the street. This is facing, Pulaski Road. This is the view facing Osborne. As the stores are facing Pulaski Road. There's also elevations of the backs of the buildings which face the parking lot.
This is Osborne, you said, right?
This is Osborne, correct. Yes, we have a lot more glass over here and some windows. This is where the stairwell would be going to the upstairs, so it's very difficult to get windows, in that area, but we, got us, and we also added some gables on this elevation that the architectural review board wanted to see.
What are the building colors?
Excuse me?
Colors.
Colors, have a, do have a color. Red right here, which we can get out. Yeah, these would be the colors. I can't produce the colors in a large printout, sorry about that. Pass those around, we can do that.
It's brick down here, I guess?
Yeah, that's brick at the bottom, correct.
Is it a brick veneer? Is it full brick, age brick, concrete brick? What kind of brick is it?
No, it'd be, it's only coming up under the windows, but it'd be a real brick veneer on it.
So it is a veneer, it's not a full brick, it's the...
It's just a veneer of real brick.
Yeah, well, the brick
Twice.
veneer, there's a 4-inch brick veneer, which is a real brick.
Full.
It's not a thin brick.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess you gotta be, but,
And it's a clay material, right?
And the
Clay,
first,
right.
the first story material itself, like this part in here, what is this, like the concrete type, the concrete board?
Is it hardy plank, is it?
Hardy plank lap siding on the
Yes.
bottom,
Yeah.
and,
Right.
hardy shingle siding
Yep.
on the upper portion.
Yep. That's good stuff.
Did the ARB comment on the colors patterns or no?
Actually, I may have to go back to the ARB for the final approval, but this is pretty much what we talked about.
They didn't want shutters.
no shutters.
Yeah, we showed them a plan with the shutters.
The ARB did not want shutters,
They
right?
told us to take them
What
off.
was the reason?
They didn't like them, they told us to take them off.
What about, since this is still just ink on paper, either break, instead of one solid color, breaking it up a little bit so it doesn't,
We broke it up with different material, but.
yeah, I see that,
Right.
it's better.
We could do some different shades.
Yeah, I
You
was
know,
thinking of something like that.
Yeah.
You want,
Lighter and
you don't want
darker
too much
shades.
of a contrast though.
Right,
It's just like a different shade of,
Yeah, just like,
right.
one little lighter, one little darker. different. You're gonna get that effect anyway with the different materials.
Yeah, the
yeah.
brick
Right,
and
yeah.
Yeah,
these are the impressions, right?
right,
Right, correct. And the scallop shingle's actually up on the top.
yeah,
yeah.
What are you thinking about that one? The application for the parking to the zoning board,
Yes,
what's that an application for?
it's for,
Less
two
signs
parking
or
stalls.
less,
No,
two less?
two less parking stalls. Originally, we had 9-foot stalls, we had ample parking, but the stalls were 9 foot by 20. And I think, according to the code, the planning board has an option of approving that, but apparently we were
rarely
on to
ever
have
do.
10-foot stalls, so now it forces back the zoning board of appeals for a 2-stall variance.
do you have the,
And-
I'm sorry, do you have the, drawing with the shutters on it with you?
Yes, I do. Let me get some different colors.
was their explanation? I mean, aside from they didn't like it, was there, did it look cheesy?
This is, Bob was there, I wasn't there, but from what I understand, they just said, they didn't like it.
Well, you know, they told us to take them off, you know?
Yeah.
Cause we had another different color scheme too, which, there was just too much
Yeah,
red
okay.
here, so, you know. So this calmed it down, this was gray and green with the red brick down below, but they said, they wanted to take the shutters off and put just a trim casing around the windows. So, you know, which way do we go?
Yeah.
I definitely
Why- why
like
don't
the
they-
other,
Yeah.
the brick that you're proposing, the red.
Yeah, I definitely like this brick better.
Yeah.
100%.
And the newer building models have eliminated a lot of the, shutters. They go into that small,
It's a 4-inch casing around the window.
yeah, it's, I mean, I think it looks cleaner and nicer, but that's just me personally.
No, I think it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
You can have some nice contrast there, so.
Yep.
And all the other site recommendations you mapped out.
Yes.
When do you go to, ZBA, do you know?
We have to get denial from.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've referred the plans to the building department, they just gotta get through it, they'll issue the denial, and you can go to the ZBA.
No, we can't go through before the planning board subject to the parking variance? We have to do that first.
I had spoken with Dick Ehlers, and he had sort of just in general, not just with this application, he wanted applicants to receive their variances before we move forward with public hearing, just in case anything changed as a requirement of the ZBA. We wanna have the full and complete plan that we're presenting to the public at that time.
We do have the, parking lot to the north, so that,
Town.
the town
Yeah.
parking lot, right?
Does the board have any other questions or recommendations
think,
on it? Or okay with all the buffers and that western?
It's a lot better.
We can keep these?
Yeah, if you want,
We
yeah,
can
you
keep
can.
this one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll follow up with that.
What are you, the government?
Were these sent over, the new ones sent over to the architecture board? Were they forwarded
The
to?
new plans,
Would you like
I have to try.
at 2:30
Put them in, or you forward them to them?
I mean, I could forward up the new,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they haven't been yet, but.
All right, okay,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, next matter on the agenda is RGR Ventures LLC minus subdivision. Here. How we doing?
Want to just state your names for the record?
I'm Richard Israel. I'm a principal in RGR Ventures LLC.
Thomas Wolford, engineer with Young and Young.
Alright. So, the planning department has received and reviewed a 4-lot minor subdivision application, which is seeking to subdivide an existing 8.768 acre parcel into 4 lots. One with an area of 141,959 square feet, which is lot number 4, and the remaining 3 lots will have an area of 80,000 square feet. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of Middle Country Road and Manor Road. It is located within the Industrial A zoning district, and all the proposed lot sizes comply with the dimensional requirements of the Industrial A zoning district. Secret review was conducted on the proposed minor subdivision, parts 2 and 3 of the short EAF completed by planning staff on November 7th, 2018. The proposed action is a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA, with no further environmental review required. Right now, as I stated, it's on the northeast corner of Middle Country Road and Manor Road. Right now, the parcel is vacant. The parcel has approximately 850 feet of frontage on Manor Road and approximately 460 feet of frontage on Middle Country Road. The land is vacant and cleared except for an existing row of vegetation along Manor Road, which can be seen on my staff report in figures 2 through 4. Staff recommends that the existing vegetation should be preserved as a condition of subdivision approval, as the existing vegetation will help to screen any potential industrial uses which may land on the property. In addition to the screening benefits provided by this row of trees, the vegetation lies within a permanent New York State DOT easement, which is detailed later on. One recommendation from staff is that in order to reduce the number of curb cuts on Middle Country Road as well as Manor Road, staff is recommending that the applicant to include common access easements. Staff would recommend that 1 and 2 should share a common access, and lots 3 and 4 should share a common access off of Manor Road. This is beneficial. Instead of having 4 curb cuts from whatever use, now you can have 2 on Manor Road.
How do they line up with Lavender across the street?
Lavender Farm it's about 30 feet. These ones would not line up.
Okay.
Exactly, the Lavender Farm, I mean, roughly, when I scaled it, yeah.
Okay.
Kinda right around there.
Is that a split zone there?
Excuse me?
Is it a split zone there?
No, no, 100% industrial.
Wholly within industrial.
This whole area is industrial, even the property to the north.
I know the parcel on the other side of the street is.
Yeah, the other side of the street, you get into, I
totally
believe, RLC and APZ, but this whole block on the northeast corner is all industrial. And although due to the dimensional requirements, there will be no further subdivision of these parcels, staff recommends that the access easements should be of sufficient width if they were able to construct a road meeting industrial standards. That would just be a 55-foot wide, in the code it's a 55-foot wide right-of-way. I would just recommend a 55-foot wide easement, just for any future planning issues that may present themselves. Now there is, as I mentioned, there is a easement again on the property, which is shown on the subdivision map, and it's recorded by the New York State Department of Transportation. This is a remnant from when they constructed the Long Island Expressway back in the 60s. The purpose of the easement was for, quote, constructing slopes and appurtenances thereto as established for and by the construction of the project herein identified, the LIE, and for repair and maintenance of such slopes and appurtenances thereto. The easement language goes on to further state, reserving, however, to the owner of the property pertaining to parcel number 4181, which is how it was identified on the state maps, and such owners, successors, or assigns the right of using said property, providing the exercise of that right by his owner or successors or assigns does not interfere with or prevent the use and exercise of the easement rights. Changing the lines on a map, I don't believe would pose any issue with these easements. However, when the site does come in for any potential development, it'll need to be referred to the DOT, and it'll need to receive their blessing for any sort of disturbance or construction within that easement area.
Are you gonna show cross easements on the, individual lots?
I mean, that's a question for,
I don't understand the question.
like within
Like
any sort of.
shopping centers now, they adjoin them so that
Be a
people don't
future
go on the road.
cross-access agreement.
You have it right here.
Well, I mean, if that, I believe the
Are
question
you
is,
asking
would that
that you would
easement
wanna have an
run?
easement that goes across these 4 lots?
That's the question that's being asked.
Okay. I don't believe it's necessary in industrial, because usually most industrial users want the security, they're fenced in. It's a different thing between retail. This is not a major road that you care whether the person exits here or follows down to a lit intersection that would be along there. So I don't think it applies to this particular type of subdivision or the type of use that you're really doing here. You know, we basically, when we purchased this piece, we realized that there was really no way we were gonna get a curb cut along Middle Country Road because of the way that the expressway lays out, that this is a single road this way, nobody could ever enter or do whatever. We have a lit intersection here, It just makes common sense that everybody uses this, signal to gain access and back and forth, kind of thing. The slope easement, I could understand it when they were building the road and the like. I don't, and I believe the history is only through hearsay that when they built the end of the Long Island Expressway, the town required them to build Manor Road. There must have been a road up here that led down, you know, or maybe this connection existed at the time. So my understanding is that the state built Manor Road at that time to whatever, so that's why if you think it's kinda odd that the state has easements along a town road. This is a town road, not a state road at this point.
I think it
That's my
actually,
understanding.
Middle Road actually went all the way through at that, before they did the expressway
Right.
there.
So, you know, and just as a person, I was saying, if you could see the grade between the road and this, it's almost 7 feet different. So it's kinda odd that they're looking to protect this grade. I could understand them not wanting, you know, the roads to fail because of grade, but usually that's done with a negative grade more than a positive grade, so. But it's there, we'll abide by it and the like. I don't know if the New York DOT even cares about what, you know, we'll find
Yeah,
out.
when it comes for development, you know, they may say that it's just, that was something that was in place 40, 50 years ago.
My experience with slope easements is that the state would only have objection to somebody making the slope worse, just to lower it there in favor of that. So they just want their slope not to be greater than, probably a 1-on-3 or 1-on-4 slope that they require. So if you lower it, the greater the property.
Moving on, there's one section which, the board needs to weigh in on. Now, the town code process for industrial subdivision applications dictates that there should be a sketch plan, a preliminary plat, and a final plat. The code states that the applicant must submit 3 alternative sketch plans, of which the planning board will select, their best choice, so that they can move forward with the subdivision design process. Now, due to the location of the parcel, the proposed layout, the fact that there's no real potential for any future subdivisions in here, you know, he's not designing a major industrial subdivision. Does the board wanna see alternative sketch plans, or would they be amenable to considering this the final plat?
I think that one makes the most sense for me right there.
Well, is that in, Bob, is that within our purview to make that decision if the code is specific on it?
Sorry, I was.
I agree with Ed, but I don't know if that's our decision to make.
So,
The
now,
code require, or.
town code it requires industrial subdivisions. Now, I mean, it is sort of ambiguous on what they define as an industrial subdivision, there's no clear definition. You know, with that, if it's just looking at the fact that it's zoned industrial, does that mean any subdivision of land in an industrial zone is industrial? Or was that intended to be for a major industrial subdivision? That's the one thing that the code is sort of ambiguous on.
Or
So
one
right
that's creating an interior road.
A road, right.
So, as I said, Bob, the code requires a sketch plan, preliminary plat, final plat.
Right.
You know, I'm posing the question to the board if they can accept this as a final plat, or do we have to go through that alternative sketch design, being that there's no.
Prepared to comment on this application, so I'll have to catch up on
It's
it.
just a general
Yeah.
question, you know, cause I think, it sounds like we agree that this is acceptable, but I just wanna make sure legally, town code wise, that we could make
You
that
have the authority to do
determination.
Right, okay.
Alright, well, we can
We'll
talk to Taylor
research it
about
and
that.
get back to you.
Research it and get an answer.
I
Well,
think.
the question is do I have to show you 3 different plans, possibilities? It's not
Right.
whether this goes automatically to final. You can
Right.
agree that this is the sketch plan,
Without having to do an alternative to it.
for having to do an alternative to it. I wouldn't even,
Alternative, lot line of 1 foot.
But we don't wanna have to make you
Yeah,
do
I don't
that.
have, that's ridiculous.
It's an academic exercise, and in this
Right.
case, there's no real flexibility in terms of giving the property size and configuration. There's limited what you can do other than what's being shown.
Alright, so we can talk to Dick Ayers when he gets back about that, and I will relay the information. It's noted that the subject parcel is not located within the Riverhead Water District or any of its extensions. The closest water mains are located approximately 2,700 feet west on Middle Country Road and approximately 400 feet east on Splish Splash. I'm not sure if this is gonna come into factor with the applicant's discussions with the health department. It may or may not, right now, I don't believe that they're proposing any uses that are heavy water uses or any water use, so they just recommended that they begin discussions with the health department as soon as possible. Pursuant to town code, if, there was a $3,000 per lot subdivision fee for parks and recreation fees. In effect, this proposed subdivision will create 3 additional lots. The recreational fee for the proposed subdivision would be $9,000, which would be required to be paid to the town board as a condition of subdivision approval. The subdivision will require health department approval. It was referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. I have not received a letter back from them yet. If approved, the subdivision map must be filed with the county clerk, as well as Suffolk County Real Tax Property Service. In closing, it would be keeping the existing vegetation along Manor Road, and the shared common access easements.
And we're also waiting to hear back from Vinnie Gaudiello on it as well.
Correct.
Do you have any potential users or not yet?
We have some potential users, some that are not allowed by the current code. We think that this property may lay out very well to solve some of our, car storage issues that exist for our current, auto retailers along 58. Would be kind of an ideal use, and whether, it's not the planning board's decision, I guess it's the town board's decision of whether they would allow car storage in industrial use, whether A, C, or whatever, but, yeah, it would be ideal for that. Car storage takes no water use, no building use, and the like. Because of the difference of topography here, with some additional screening, no one will ever see this to ever exist. So, we've had discussions with a couple of our local dealers, if they would want a parcel to create that, kind of thing. We've always seen this as, and yes, we've had other people approach us who wanna build warehouses and things like that. Most of the people wanna build large warehouses, and we would probably have to bring water here to do that. So, water is very far away. I never heard the statistic of it only being 400 feet from over here, cause I was told that was a splish splash main and not a public water main. But, be that what it may, when we approached the water department, they said the only place for us to get water was to bring it down from the main that's been extended towards Edwards, which is that 2,700 square feet, which costs, I think they told us approximately $300 a foot. So for about $800,000, we could get water to this site. $350 a foot, so it's even worse, $1 million.
Should look at connecting to Toomey, because you don't have to cross any state roads, it would be cheaper going from Toomey over there. Even if it's a lot longer, it would be.
Right, so that would be coming this way. The town wants us to come down this road, which we're in the.
No, I'm saying from back here,
Yeah,
Toomey,
I don't think anybody has even suggested that.
because it's all off the road, no restoration, and you don't have to
Well,
cross.
so is this,
Well, that's a state road.
but it's in the shoulder of the road. I don't know what, so you're saying it'll be cheaper than the $350?
Check with them, but when you start jacking on the major roadways, it's.
There's no jacking.
Well, Manor,
That's a little.
it's pretty wide, but it just, follow their
Right.
direction, but I just ask them to look at the other way.
So, we're looking to pretty much, we have applied to the health department. We're going through their processes. Basically, as it stands now, each one of these lots will have 600 gallons of flow, which limit its, I'll say the size of the buildings that would be able to go there, based on their uses and the like. This piece of property is in a zone that automatically can receive Pine Barren credits. You can double your water density, by using Pine Barren credits, but it also has the caveat that you must have public water. So, for now, we're just figuring what we can do with what we currently have. We have a piece of land that it's not serviced by public water, and we'll see and go.
And Pine Barren credits are $60,000 each.
I own them already.
Oh, cool. Hopefully you got them cheaper than 60.
And if you can buy them for 60, I'll buy a couple more. They're more than 60.
And you have them just laying around?
With the purchase of this parcel, we bought Pine Barren credits that would accommodate this parcel. At the time, we bought this parcel 3 years ago. So, it was something that the partnership was willing to do at that time, and, things were inexpensive at that time, so we said, let's invest in them. So, Pine Barren credits are a commodity, so they can be, they don't have to be attached to any property until you're ready.
I was on the commission in 1998, and Joe Goss was complaining that he was only getting $9,000 of credit.
There you go. In Southampton.
In Southampton.
So the only other comment I have, I don't have a problem with the cross easements here. We don't know what eventually, is gonna happen here, but to us, this could land up to be, originally we thought, in zoning of industrial A, we were allowed to have gas stations. At that time, there was a little bit of a gas station war going on, of other major companies looking for places for gas stations. Route 58 was kind of being closed down out of gas stations that, they didn't really want any more there. So if this were to become a quasi, I'm gonna use the word retail site or something that is of services, it probably should have its own entrance versus sharing an entrance with this particular lot. But that would be, after thinking about it, after we've had some discussions, I would think that this lot, we've left, so basically we created, I'll say the minimum lot size for A, B, and C, and the remainder went here. So we consider this lot to be a little different or special. It is a corner lot, it's across from Splish Splash, items like that,
Wasn't an assisted living, suggested there at one time by somebody?
That's on the other
Well,
side.
you're confusing this
On
side.
the other side,
So
okay.
this side, was owned by Mancini. He went through the whole process. He has won his lawsuit to keep the existing zoning or have some limitations to it. So, that's this side. This side is not industrial. When you look at the map, this entire parcel here, I believe, is all industrial. You're starting with Suffolk Cement back here and all that. Where, once you cross Manor Road, you change.
RLC.
Right. So,
Mr. Chair, to answer your question, I think there's an argument that could be made that this sketch could be acceptable. I'd like to speak to your counsel, though, who's had more familiarity with dealing with these subdivisions, just looking at the general subdivision regulations and how we define minor vis-a-vis industrial. I think you could certainly, have some wiggle room in order to justify your action.
Some flexibility.
and how big of a park would I have to build on this site to avoid my park and recreation fee?
That I would have to look to, I would have to get that answer for you. An industrial park.
For 100 families, and how many for none? I always thought park and recreational fees were only for residential subdivisions.
It's in our industrial subdivision code.
Nice. Okay.
You could make this a lavender viewing or smelling park.
All right, we have some more research to do on our end. We're waiting for Vinnie's comments, planning commission.
Okay.
That's a straightforward layout, so.
If we can avoid having you to do that, please, I can refer from the board.
Good, so we'll move forward with the health department and get our answers. Ms. there any way to submit to the DOT so that we could see if they have any questions
I
or
referred the
issues?
subdivision plans to them,
Okay.
along with the application, I could
To the
follow.
state DOT.
Correct,
But we have not heard back.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could follow up with them, but again, I don't see how changing lines on a map will affect it. They may just say, you know, at the time of development, they'll reserve right to comment, but I'll follow up with them.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is Calverton Tree Farm site plan.
How you doing?
Everyone,
How you doing?
good. For the record, Kevin Brown, I'm with Brown Duke and Vogel, and we're attorneys for Calverton Tree Farm. Tammy Kuna, PW Grosser, is the lead planner on this. She had another engagement today, it was kind of short notice, so she's not here. Normally, she'd be doing all this, so I do not have the current, design, but hopefully you do.
So the planning department has received and reviewed two applications. One application is seeking to merge two existing parcels, identified as 98-1-16.3 and 16.5, which are located at 4070 Middle Country Road and 3968 Middle Country Road. The other application is a site plan application to perform grading and drainage improvements in order to construct an approximately 2,000-foot long haul road, which would serve as access to and from a proposed agricultural site.
Greg, can I interrupt? I apologize, Mr. Chair. They're number 3 and number 4 on the agenda. Number 3 is the site plan, number 4 is the parcel merger. Do you wanna review this concurrently?
Like, if you could go through them one at a time, it would be, I think, less confusing, so
So
we
let
kinda
me,
deal with them separately.
let me go through the merger. Alright, so one of the applications received was a merger.
Okay, so this is application number 4 on the
Yeah.
agenda.
I'll consider number 4.
Okay.
The two lots as they currently exist, let me just get the numbers here. Lot number 16.3, which I will refer to as the eastern parcel, is a 56.75 acre parcel, which is presently the site of a New York State DEC construction and demolition debris recycling facility, which is currently operating under DEC registration number 52W77R. The subject parcel has also been the site of an extensive mining and sanding operation, and as such, there is practically no natural vegetation or natural grading existing on the site. The second parcel, identified as number 16.5, which I'll call the western parcel, is a 96.67 acre parcel, which is presently enrolled in the New York State Ag and Markets Agricultural District number 7. The western parcel is presently improved with a single-family residence, which does not have a C of O or an LPEU, as well as 2 farm buildings on the site. One is approximately a 9,600 square foot building, and the other is approximately 3,600 square feet. The merger of the parcels would result in a lot size of 153.42 acres. Now, some of the issues, I had provided the board with an additional document which shows some historical aerials. Now, as you can see, there are 3 images. One was taken from 2010, one was taken from 2013, and one was taken from 2016. One of the large questions with the merger of these 2 parcels is the need for it. One of the concerns that planning has is, if both of these parcels are merged, how does that impact the New York State DEC registration? Will the DEC permits now extend onto the newly assembled parcel, or will they be limited to what the current property limits are of the DEC registration. Cause right now they're limited to the eastern parcel, which is 16.5. How will that impact, will that give them some sort of approvals to then expand their mining operation? One of the things that staff recommends is that the extent of the mining and contractor yard operations be delineated on a revised site plan to clearly indicate where the limits are, and that if the planning board approves the merger of the parcels, any approval should include a condition that the mining and contractor yard operations shall not exceed the present limits.
Would you like me to address that?
Sure.
Yeah. This is gonna take a little history, and I apologize, but it just takes a little history to get there. So this site, this, eastern site was a mine site, DEC and town mine site for decades. The owner, Ed Partridge, is a contractor. He used this site for material for projects and sold material. He also, in the course of doing construction work, would, bring back sand from jobs and concrete for recycle. So that, it was a contractor yard and a mine for years. In 2004, I believe it was rezoned, both lots were rezoned, from industrial to agricultural, 2004. Coming around 2010, the mine, the reserves were ending, and, he still had the contractor yard there with the recycled material, but the mining reserves were ending. The town had zoned it ag, so he needed to have a plan. Now, as a contractor, when he's doing jobs, he was realizing I'm buying a lot of, nursery plantings from, Miranda and all these folks, right? It's a good business. He filed a certificate in 2010, to register under Ag and Markets for, a nursery development, and this is what he did. He came in, this is, oh, I'm sorry, this is in front of this is in the town record, this is the application that was made, let's see, almost a decade ago. And here's what he proposed to do. This entry road here is there's no DOT permit on the existing entry on the east side. I understand it's a historic entry, but there's not a DOT permit for it. So he's gonna close that off, and he's gonna start a nursery here. And he planted 14,000 nursery stock in here. They all died. 95% of them didn't survive. Bit of a problem, so he hired Environmental Sciences Corporation and P.W. Grosser. He had soil scientists, biologists, and hydrologists. And he said, can you look at this site, what can I do with it? So they investigated for a year or two, and what they found, between drilling and everything else and evaluating the soils, is that whole area, I think it was there was even a racetrack or something in here before, I don't know, but like a horse racetrack or something, but anyways, it was all hard pan. Everything on the bottom's hard pan, right at the water table, so there's hard pan and the water table. And the study found that 99% of the planted trees did not survive. The failure is attributed to clay, hard pan soil conditions, immediate proximity to the water table, causing root rot and ultimate loss of the nursery stock and the mature trees. So he had these guys start working on some plans to see how he could start converting this to, what can I do with it now? The design between Grosser, and these are all the studies, soil temperature, water temperature, I mean, he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this. The design that he came up with was to start working away this hard pan and putting, or if not, putting a raised bed over that. And a raised bed, what that would do was put sand in there with topsoil on it, get it above, get some separation. You could put small seed plantings, stock plantings in there, grow them a few feet, then move them over to this side here where you have natural soils, where the hard pan runs like this through the site. Put the trees over to the virgin soils for the full growth. All these studies trying to see, are you ever gonna be viable there? It was, hey, this is not a good this could be a very productive place because you'll have optimum distance from the tempered water table. What that does is control temperature. there's a bunch of studies on how to use the mulch to keep them at the optimum temperature, and they were thinking they could get tree growths to harvest within 2.5 to 3 years instead of 5 years. So, he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars designing these plans. I came in because there was a question with DEC, what type of work is exempt for agricultural uses, okay? That's how I got involved in this. I was called down to figure that out and work on that. The attorneys that initially worked on this, and this is all in your files, they believed that there was an exemption for the grading work associated with this from the code, to put in the access way and to do the grading necessary for this. I got involved working with DEC. I think, 5 years into it, he's got all these plans, he's trying to get some trees planted. I think he gets impatient and he starts doing the work. Under the exemption. Town, therefore we have litigation with the town. This goes for, I don't know, about a year. Finally sitting with him, we said, look, what we really want, I couldn't really understand the resistance to the plan, cause it's an agricultural plan eventually. Thinking a little too much, I said, maybe it's just about the fees for the sand coming out, the $2 a yard. So we converted this to a commercial drive instead of a farm road. That way, $2 a yard gets paid out. Everybody's happy, but he's already 75% done with this road, 80% done. It was 80% done, 3-4 years ago when all this commotion, everything hit the fan. So, we went through with the town, we finally stipulated, some of the paperwork you have in here, it's a stipulation, it broke everything out in order. It was a stipulation on settlement, there was no, determination on the merits. If push came to shove, I'm right back saying this is a farm operation, and these are example from DEC and town regulation. But we agreed to settle it out, stop fighting about it, try to get things moving. That was year and a half ago. We submitted the road.
April of 17, I think, is when the stipulation was
Yeah, when we signed it,
filed.
but even before that, we submitted the road, because the road was 3/4 constructed. So I said, let's get the road into them, show them the road, and we'll put in the plan for the road. DOT signed off on the road a year ago. We spent a year with DOT also. They signed off on the road. They're requiring us to close this access here too. They know, they don't want multiple curb cuts, and they know this isn't an approved curb cut ever. It was just historical entry. So we got our DOT approval.
For the entrance, not the road.
Yeah, no, for the entrance.
How can for the
commercial
entrance cut onto the state road?
Yeah, yes, that's
Okay.
right, yeah, I'm sorry, for the entrance cut, but designed to commercial standard. Because during this transition, he will be using it also for the contractor's yard. Also in discussions with the town, and this was all resolved in litigation, he had trailers put in up behind the garage. You can see those there, right? We agreed to get those, his equipment's there, put in parking, move those down onto the part of the site that's the C&D operation.
So you're referring to, on, I believe, page 5 of the staff report, you're referring to the commercial vehicles that are being stored.
Yes, the commercial
up here on
vehicles
the
are.
agricultural parcel.
Right, and we put in 2 trailers too. All this is part of the motion, which is all fine. So there's parking provided down here for those vehicles. We're gonna move the contractor yard vehicles down there. Also, the idea is to start moving across. We're not expanding the nonconformity. We're turning this into a tree farm. They can be pretty profitable. We thought it could be. It's gonna start moving. What'll happen is these this may eventually eliminate. It's gonna go down by not half, cause all this counts, but it's gonna reduce the nonconformity over time. It's gonna be converting to a tree farm, and as it converts, if it's profitable, maybe you'll find another place to do a C&D operation, but right now, this is what he's trying to do. Greg, are you still in the subdivision portion?
Yeah, we're sort of meandering. All right, while you spoke of the material that's gonna be used for these raised Missouri beds, where is that material gonna be coming from?
It's coming from on site. What you have to do is get sand, but here's what's happened over the last 2 years while we're doing all this. He started actually pulling up parts of this, hard pan right down this corner. If you get a current picture, you're gonna see about 3 acres of planted trees on here. He started ripping up the hard pan, and from this cut, the elevation was, here was about 40 feet. He started flattening it over here into this area, so he's got separation from the water table with soils, and he's
Just-
planting trees.
Duke, you keep mentioning the hard pan and the water table. What's the water table over there?
About 25 to 28 feet.
Why would he need to be that deep to plant trees?
That's where that's where the water table on this that's where they already are.
Right, but
They're
you're saying
already
that
there.
you went into this whole explanation of why the trees died, and the
Yes.
report said it was because of the hard pan at the
Right.
water table.
Right, so, it's the hard pan right at the water table, so what he did, in parts of this corner down here, he dug up the hard pan, put sand and topsoil there, got a few feet separation from the water table.
Are we saying because it was poor drainage?
Yeah, what happens with that hard pan, right at the water, the roots are there, and
The water just sits?
it sits and the
there and they
roots
rot.
rot and die, that's what all those studies say.
So-
So what he started doing was digging up part of that hard pan, grading out that sand to get that
Alright,
5
I
feet of
follow you.
separation.
So, the way Greg shows these, I guess you would call it encroachment onto the other lot over the years, are you telling us that that was because of the tree farm activity?
Yeah, yes, the original plan was to have this area for the trees based on the close proximity to the water table, the screen, to keep temperature control, the screening from wind, and the idea is that this can all grow trees in about 3 years instead of 5.
What happened to the topsoil above the hard pan? What happened to all the soil material that was above the hard pan?
There wasn't any. This was all hard pan because it had been it had been a contract.
It's been a mine
Yeah.
site, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, we were put into a zoning district with nothing there to farm with. So, and, though he didn't realize that at first, he thought, well, it's a little clay, but we can plant in it. So we planted 14,000 trees, they met their maker there. Took those, and then started developing this plan, which took them several $100,000. And the plan, and that was the plan, and raised bed here to get the initial growth, and then in here, get the trees planted. And he started that project, it was gonna end up about, I think, 8 to 10 acres of trees. And that's when all this commotion and.
Greg, did
went on.
you do a site visit there?
Yes.
And does it look like, could you tell where that lot line is?
When you're on site, it's extremely difficult to
Know where you are.
Okay, so the western edge, what did it look like to you? Did it look like it was, the trimming of the hard pan, or did it look like it was just a continuation of the mining process?
It looked like it was a continuation of the mining process. I mean, I'm not gonna purport myself to be a professional, but it looked like
I'll go out with you guys tomorrow, we can see 3 acres of planted trees right there.
Well, now, when you mentioned it was come on site, cause there was a section of my report where we did get something back from Ag and Markets. There was a plan.
Yes, that was the exemption plan that was submitted 3 years ago. Usually when you do that, I do a lot of this around the state, Ag and Markets usually sends down Dr. Summers, meets with the town, meets with the farmer, says, okay, let's work this out. Never showed up this time. I think the reason is, and all fair play, the code enforcement guys came, took pictures of a C&D site and road construction, sent them up and said, it's a mine. And the Ag and Markets sent out a letter, I said, well, we're done fighting about this. But we can go back to Ag and Markets, and we gotta go back to DEC. And that's all stuff we're gonna do. DEC's still there with the full application for the ag exemption. We go back to Ag and Markets. We're in the middle of this, we had the road there, we said, okay, and that's why you stepped through the stipulation, was the road's 80% done, let's finish it. We'll get that finished, we'll start these plantings here, and we'll deal with the rest of it.
So the original mining permit from the DEC, was that specific into how many cubic yards of material could leave the site?
No, the mining permit for mine site, no, that was a mining permit.
Right.
Yeah, that was for the site, that's right, that's a mining permit. After that, there's,
And that permit's closed out, and then he got a
Right.
permit for the C&D.
yeah, and the C&D, well, the C&D, they were
It's
co-terminus
the
for
reclamation
a
part
long
of it.
time. Yeah, that was it for a while.
So we definitely need to hear from the DEC on this, and I don't know if you could, schedule a site visit with them, Greg. also, debris recycling on the site? That's what it says in your report, right?
C&D?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is being
So,
used as a-
That's going to continue, correct?
Yes, for the time, yeah,
That's
it's a
what I-
contract year at C&D.
Alright, so will that continue on 16-3, or is that
Oh,
going?
yeah, all on 16.3,
All on
and as a matter of fact, it'll be reduced it'll be reduced by the tree farm. And if the tree farm succeeds, they'll find another place for that.
Are there wells on the site for irrigation there?
There is, yeah, I believe there's, up here in the corner, but.
How did he water the ones that died?
He didn't need to water them, they drowned.
But when he
Yeah.
planted them, he didn't know they were gonna drown?
Yeah, I'm sure, I think there's a pump up here.
Okay.
think.
Is there any other, monitoring wells on the site?
I don't know.
Bob, does the town still, have the ability to get $2 a yard, everything that leaves the, site?
For ag use, our $2 a cubic yard doesn't apply.
Doesn't apply for ag use?
But for the road it does.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought it was all about, so.
And we did stipulate, as said in April 2017, there was a payment, 180,000 for about 90,000 cubic yards of material that came off site, plus Partridge and Calvin Farm also paid, I think it was a $15,000 fine each, for a total of 30.
Right.
So, with the understanding that they'd have the ability to come back and make this application to you guys.
Yeah,
for-
so we're not
for this
claiming the
approval.
exemption anymore, we're coming in for permits.
So if that plan that's to your left ever becomes actually achievable, the whole C and D operation is gone.
Well, if he gets a viable nursery running, he can, there's
That
other
shows that
places.
whole area treed,
That's right, that was the original plan that he
Okay.
was working towards.
and is that something that's still part of the plan
Well,
moving ahead?
he has to get a viable nursery in here, I'm sure if he's successful, he won't have any, if those are successful like he thinks, there's other places to put a C and D yard, you can
Okay,
put them,
so it'd be an ability to add to that Missouri bed, those Missouri beds would
Yeah,
expand.
though it's starting to, what I'm saying is, what he's finding is just that, before he thought he had to put in the Missouri bed above the
hard
hard
pan.
pan. That had a limit, you can't, you can only grow the trees to such certain maturity in there before
Okay.
you don't have the room for them anymore,
Right,
you gotta
okay.
move 'em. What he's finding is, by grading, pull the hard pan, push over, flatten the sand to get some separation, put some topsoil on, and that's what you'll see if you go, you'll see about 2.5,
So
3 acres.
it's not clay,
No, it's a hard pan, that's what he thought he
Okay.
was dealing with clay,
Okay.
but it's just not good for anything, that's what the 3 years of studies were about, trying to figure out how to, you know, they tried things like
Get it
mulch
to drain.
with it, mulch it, you know, put mulch with the.
right?
Let's see if they can come up with something that
Yeah,
will work.
he spent several $100,000, so, I know all along that the approach has been, well, you guys are just mining, but he spent several $100,000 on this venture, to try to get this going. And that's, and honestly, I think that's why he started off a little. on a bad
And I
foot
don't know
with
whether
the
you
town.
noticed, because I think I may have shared it with the planning department, but Mr. Brown did give me an invoice to show that at
Oh,
one
yeah.
time he did sell trees.
He is, yeah, he is
So,
selling trees
I'm not
already.
sure if you want this part of your record, but this is part of what was submitted through Mr. Brown as
Yeah,
part of this
yeah.
application. to
He
show
has
that-
started growing trees, I mean,
Yeah.
he's intends to do this. I admit it didn't all run down the way we were hoping.
I would think the first thing we need to do is find out about that DEC permit. Is the DEC permit, if 16.3 and 16.5 are joined, what happens to the permit?
Well, that's
permit
the,
then, you know,
you've gone back and
we've
forth.
added, you know, we've added all that acreage, you know, we've added 56 acres.
But
Well,
the
actually,
site
we had
plan,
96 to the
but the
50.
site plan,
No, I know, to the 96.
but the site plan will delineates, and we always intended the site plan delineated that the site plan delineated the C and D facility here, and that this was tree farm.
Well, I understand that, but again, you know, I'm sure that the original DEC permit gives it a distinct
No.
lot.
No, not on C and D.
There's no lot
There's a lot number,
It
but
has to
C and D, yeah, but C and D for the registrations, they don't, you know, that's not a full up plan, it's a registration, it's on
not saying that I take I'm not gonna have any opinion either way, I'm just saying that it has to be, I'm sure that it's assigned to that lot, what happens if we merge the lots?
Right.
I'd just like to get an answer to that, before we move ahead.
Maybe you say it, maybe it'd be good any place on the lot,
Well,
just as you say that, but
Well, I don't know about that, because if he were to expand it even east and westward, I'm sure that the DEC would take,
Right, but we'll have a site plan that shows the parking and the contractor yard, I mean, is this the most recent?
We're not
Yeah,
debating that.
commercial
Yeah,
work area.
Yeah.
So we'd be out of that.
Well, I think the question is, what does the applicant gain from merging the parcels?
We get rid of the problem, this whole case with the town came down to a line that runs down the middle. That's the problem, you can't excavate within,
15 feet, I
10
believe
feet.
it is.
Yeah, so it basically makes it impossible to do anything between the two lots. And the position of both the prior attorneys on it, when they initially put this in, was that it'd be exempt. Our position in the litigation was it's exempt. We decided this, we can keep doing this forever, or we can sign a stipulation and move forward.
Yeah, clean it up.
So 15 feet is the code?
I know that you can't, there's a certain distance between a property line where you cannot excavate, and I believe it's
Yeah.
15.
So Greg, and
So,
you,
so in reality, if he didn't do the merger, they would have to bring back that line where it's presently encroaching.
Greg, you identified approximately 430 feet.
Yeah, and that was just using, Suffolk GIS, using their measurement tools on the system. I mean, it was impossible for me to measure on
So
site.
430 feet, I don't think we could quantify as an encroachment. I mean, that's a long distance to be operating on another parcel.
Right, but that wasn't, there's not a up here, what you'll find is, the material that was pulled down and stockpiled here to bring down to be, the idea was this. They took the soils from there, they stockpiled them, it's still there, 5 years later, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later. The idea was they're gonna grade this area, turn it into the optimum level from the water table for these trees in this area, then bring that topsoil down and plant the trees. That was the idea. But of course, you can't move between the two lots, so it's hampering development of this as an agricultural lot because you can't move between the two lots, that's the other part of the problem. What we had was a lease that laid over the line. We didn't just ignore it, so Calverton Tree Farms had a lease over the line with both parties, had agricultural best management practices wrote in, had all that.
Are the properties in the same exact ownership?
Yes, they are now, they weren't
Doesn't the
before.
county automatically join those?
Not if it's not substandard. These both exceed the zoning, and even though they're in common ownership, there wouldn't be an automatic merger. No.
Yeah, residential, they may do that, but.
They normally do.
Oh, merger,
join.
yeah, if they're smaller lots and they
Yeah.
wanna get them up to the standard, yeah.
So the other parcel that was mined is down near the water table?
Yes, this side is all mined out and has the hard pan below it. So,
And there was construction debris brought onto the site, right?
yes, C and D, yeah, over the years, yeah. And
So
that-
I would be concerned about the contamination of the groundwater, and just like the lot to the west, not to the west, down the road a ways, we required some water quality tests to see if there was any contamination.
And he may have that, I don't know,
Okay,
I don't
so
work
maybe it
on
would be a
this.
good idea to bring,
PW Gross.
PW Grosser
Yeah,
to a meeting.
sorry, she'd be here.
And also, I'd like to really hear from the DEC.
The C and D was a lot of sand brought back from projects and then concrete crushed, alright?
Well,
Sort of jumped around a little bit, I'll just wrap up a couple of things. The site plan does indicate that there's going to be approximately 28,229 cubic yards of excess material remaining from the grading and draining improvements, but it does not indicate the use for this excess material, if it's gonna remain on site, if it's gonna be used for the raised Missouri beds. The site plan just needs to clarify what the intention for this extra cut is.
Yeah, that's 'cause, I don't know if you were there, so at the last meeting, they want us to turn the road. The road was here, it's 90% done. They want us to turn it so there's a clear line deconflicted from the, planting area with the yard. Were you at that meeting?
No,
That was it.
the meeting with
informal
who?
I think you were there.
Yeah, I don't
last
think
summer.
you were there.
Last summer. Yeah, what they asked us to do, the road initially came in here. We actually, it's a good idea, cause we move it over here, gives us more planting there, and that way there's a clear line whether it's going to C and D yard or to the planting area.
Yeah, there's gotta be a clear distinction.
Yeah, we'll put a meets and bounds on the, if you want, we'll put a
Meets and bounds
on the
description
C
on
and D.
the limits of where.
Yeah, and the C and D, yeah.
And would the applicant agree to, you know, that'll be a hard and fast line, they can't, and no
Yeah.
further encroachment beyond that line?
Yes, yeah. I think that encroachment you're thinking about, what that was the grading, that was grading he was doing, the grading improvement plan for the C and D was always down in here, always here.
Alright, so and I've got the direction from the board, we wanna find out about the DEC registration. I can consult with PW Grosser to see if there's any monitoring wells on site. I can see if
Yeah, I'm concerned about the level of that mining operation down to the water table and then the continued activity of construction debris. It's a concern.
cause I mean, you're down at, you said water, the
been
water
30
table was
years.
about 25?
28,
25, I mean, cause it.
yeah,
you-
25, 28, something
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that.
you're pretty much down at like thirties
Yeah.
down here, so I
Yeah,
mean, it's very.
as we found out, we were right on top of us.
Does the board have any other questions? We'll follow up with the consultant, we'll reach out to the DEC, and get some answers to the board.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
That's a recent decision. Fred Thiel brought that down. We gotta pull that out.
Okay, we are up to resolutions on the agenda. Are there any comments from the public on any resolutions? Any public comment on resolutions?
Board's attention so it wouldn't air.
Okay, number one, the Harbor Freight Tools.
Resolution number 82, the Riverhead Planning Board, Harbor Freight Tools, so moved.
Second?
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve resolution 82 for Harbor Freight Tools. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is approved. Resolution 83, is not ready to come to the board for a vote, so that is going to be, tabled until a later meeting. Okay, any comment from the public on any other matter in front of the planning board? Anyone from the public? You can go up to the thing, you're not on the agenda, so.
Good evening, Eric Ryan, Malloy Engineering, 2929 Expressway Drive North, Hawthorne, New York, here on behalf of the retail partners in conjunction with the Calverton Industries subdivision / tractor supply project. At this point, I believe, planning can confirm the only outstanding item for our final site plan approval is, SWIP approval. We just received comment the other day, we've already resubmitted to address those comments. Those comments are extremely innocent and have really no impact to the outcome of the SWIP or how it's implemented. And I'm here tonight to ask the board, if we could somehow move this along and, get this calendared for, resolution approval at the next hearing.
It'll be December 6th.
He has it, right, to approve the SWIP or review it?
Well, yeah, so the way, they've been making submissions on the SWIP, due to the contract with the town, and I believe it's D&B Engineering. They provide comments back within 2 weeks. So every round of comments sort of just adds 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, so it becomes a lengthy review process. On behalf of the applicant is really sort of holding them up. The way the town code is written, it says that no final site plan approval shall issue without the approval of a SWIP.
And that is language straight out of DEC.
Right, and we're gonna follow that, because we've been advised by council not to vary from that, but where are we right now? What's holding it up? This
There
way?
was, there was like 5 comments that, Bowler had received, I think, on last Thursday or Friday. They worked through the weekend, made a resubmission to the engineering department,
Okay,
but now it's getting to the point where
They have 2 more weeks to review that yet
Yeah.
again, that pushes us
who
beyond it.
has 2 more weeks?
the outside engineering
D&B
company.
Engineering.
D&B Engineering, who.
That's who we're using?
Yeah,
Yep.
correct. So it's really just, they could do their review, there could be one more comment that is still outstanding after they've made their resubmission, which would push it out another 2 weeks, and it's really sort of getting down to the wire with the applicant in his dealings with Tractor Supply Corporate. I had spoken to council about this issue. He said that, although it would be an exception to how we do it, he didn't see any legal issue with granting a final site plan approval conditioned upon building permits not being issued until a SWIP approval.
D&B's working for the town, right?
And we go through, Drew Dillingham is the point person with them, and we've spoken with Drew, impressing upon him the importance of getting this done sooner than later.
So really, when I spoke to council, he didn't see a legal issue with the planning board granting site plan approval, conditioning the issuance of building permits upon a SWIP. I think what that would do is that would give some level of confidence back to Tractor Supply Corporate.
But we've been advised otherwise on other applications not to do that, recently.
But we
I think we
could-
wanted to be consistent, I'm not saying we
could put
can't
it on
do
the
it.
schedule, and if you guys can, push D&B along,
That's my point, why can't we make some calls to them and say that they're holding up the process?
That's really the engineering department, they have the direct contact, they've been instructing people not to kind of subvert the chain of command. They want all communication to go through the engineering department to ensure a more a smoother process, but,
yeah, but it's not going that smoothly.
Right.
No,
so I mean, if you'd like, I can, when Dick Ayers comes back, he
Speak
can
to Drew,
you.
speak to Drew, and see if he can reach out to him and move
I'm
us along.
reaching out to him right now as we
Okay.
speak.
We could, set it up on the next agenda, and if we have to pull it, we could pull it, but try everything we can to try to make it happen, cause they need it, time sensitive.
So what I can, when Dick Ayers comes back, I can have him type something, I mean, if it's his opinion that we can do, I will get some
Okay.
correspondence, but, I wanna be, I think it's beneficial to the town, this project, this site in particular has sort of been the subject of some issues. This is a good use of the property, I don't see down the pipeline where you'd get another project, and I'd hate to see, the town suffer as well as the applicant if this,
I think we're all in agreement about that, I think,
We're gonna try to help you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, just a last ditch effort again, I'm working for the developer, he's doing everything he can, and the tenant unfortunately is antsy. If they don't get something in writing soon, basically they wanna open doors by the end of the summer next year, so without getting something in writing now in December, they're basically timing theirself out immediately, so this December 6th hearing is very critical for their deal to
Do
continue.
what you can.
I'll follow up with staff up in a few days to make sure that, it's being, going along the
you can pass
expedited
that
route.
along.
Appreciate it, just wanted to express the importance and thank you for hearing us.
You get it.
Okay, anyone else from the public want to address the board?
Good afternoon. My name's Chris Kent from Farrell Fritz. I represent S-Power. Here this afternoon with me is Ryan Galeria from S-Power, Derek Kremser from S-Power, Terry Elkowitz from VHB, who is the environmental consultant for the applicant, and Courtney Riley, construction project manager for from VHB for the project. We appreciate the opportunity to be heard on the board's request for a supplemental EIS for the Riverhead 1 solar project. The time frame to complete the requested supplemental EIS process and adopt supplemental findings would extend the necessary final approval for the Riverhead 1 project to what we've been told to the end of March of 2019. This delay in completing SECR will have a significant impact upon the ability to finance the project and thereby delay operations and threaten our scheduled delivery date under the PPA, which would cause significant damages to S-Power. To avoid those damages, we need to work toward a more timely resolution of the request made by the board. We want to complete the additional analysis and get the requested info to the board. We are working with VHB to review the planning board resolution and the enumerated concerns listed therein, and the request for a supplemental environmental impact statement. We believe the scope of the issues for the supplemental review to be consistent with those previously studied in the DEIS and the FEIS that were completed and accepted for the Riverhead 1 project. The lands proposed for future solar development were included as potential sites in the report, and the cumulative impacts of the potential development were analyzed. The mere fact that the new information discovered does not automatically, the information that may have been discovered does not automatically require the preparation of a supplemental EIS. Only if the newly discovered information poses potential significant adverse environmental impacts, and those potentially significant impacts have not already been considered in the EIS, would a supplemental EIS be required. In our current situation, the cumulative impact analysis in the EIS studied the potential impacts of future projects on those same lands now identified for a proposed project, and the findings and determinations made by the board were based upon the cumulative impacts studied in the report. In collaboration with VHB, we asked the town to consider accepting our submission of an analysis upon which the planning board can base a future decision that the information discovered has been studied under the accepted FEIS for Riverhead 1. And a determination can be made that the potential for the development of a future project on these properties is consistent with the analysis and the findings made by the board for the Riverhead 1 project. If you agree that this would be an acceptable approach, we can prepare and submit a consistency analysis for the review and consideration by the planning board. We truly appreciate your consideration of this request. We think it's a much more timely, under a tighter time frame that could meet both your request for additional information and our needs to complete the project and get it into operations, complete the SECR process so that we can get financing, so that we can get the project into operation and meet the scheduled delivery date under the PPA. It's very important. So we do want to address your concerns, but going to a full supplemental process we don't believe it's necessary, and that the timing would put us beyond the dates for delivery, which would cause severe damage to S-Power. If anybody else wants to be heard, Terry Elkowitz from VHB is the one who would be preparing the analysis. Perhaps she could also speak to the ability to do this through additional information provided rather than a full supplemental EIS. Terry?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Terry Elkowitz. I'm a principal at VHB with offices at 100 Motor Parkway in Hauppauge. So, as Mr. Kent said to you, what we're proposing to do within the confines of the SECR regulations, we're not asking to deviate from them, is to be able to provide an analysis that demonstrates to the board, A, what the impacts would be with respect to the project that you're asking about, how it has been and what has been evaluated as part of the cumulative analysis that was already presented to you in the EIS, demonstrate if there were any differences, if there are differences, assess whether those differences rise to the level of a significant adverse impact, and also provide you with an analysis of the consistency of all the cumulative work with the finding statement that you already adopted, so that we can address the questions that the board had and that you enumerated in your resolution. And we would just ask your consideration to be able to present that to you so that you could consider whether that would be sufficient as opposed to requiring the supplemental. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ryan Galeria from S-Power. I just wanted to once again reiterate our desire to have an open, transparent discussion with you. I think a lot of the issues that we're facing with this project are based on poor communication on S-Power's part. And for that, you know, I think we should apologize. I think it's made your job harder. You're obviously acting in the best interest of the town, your constituents, and we've made it a more difficult process by not having a clear, simple line of communication. So what we're proposing is to clarify, try and provide you the information that you need to feel confident in the decisions you're making, but also offer the opportunity for further discussion, clarification, any information we can provide. You know, our end goal here is to put tens of thousands of solar panels in a field, be a good, quiet neighbor. I'm not gonna trick you guys in doing that, right? This is what should be a simple, transparent process, and we wanna be your partners in that process. So I do appreciate your consideration and your help in that.
Ryan, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Was S-Power aware of this second project prior to the board accepting the EIS for the first project?
So I've got a few dates here that I can share.
Well, my understanding is that you applied the day after.
Right.
Well, the board's understanding is the day after we accepted the EIS, so I would assume that an application of that magnitude would take months to put together to get to the state, so it's really a yes or no question.
I think the application itself did take some time, but didn't have real details on the project. It was the public involvement plan that we applied for. So the project was conceptualized during the process when Riverhead 1 was going through the DIS phase, right? So we had filed for interconnection with PSEG LIPA, we had discussed options with landowners, we're trying to put together a conceptual plan. LIPA selected the project to enter into PPA negotiations, and we subsequently filed the public involvement plan because we knew that there's a very long timeline for the Article 10 application process. At that point, the project is, it's not defined in any real sense. We have a kind of an aspirational idea, but not enough to file an application, not enough to adequately constrain the project boundaries or particulars in the analysis. So we incorporated all of these lands in our.
So S-Power was able to pull the rest of that application process off in 24 hours?
No, that's.
So really, I'm just asking, the project was in the works when we accepted the final EIS of
I think that
S-Power 1.
the project was conceptualized, but not there.
You're not giving me the answer.
I'm gonna just interject something here, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, for interrupting you. We were pretty specific about asking you, is there anything in the pipeline? I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts,
Yeah.
we were specific, and your answer was no.
I agree with you. So to an extent. So I'm reviewing the documents now. I wasn't intimately involved, so I'm trying to do it from, 2 years later. And it's very frustrating, right? So in the DEIS, in the final EIS, we have a lot of specific questions about applications in the works, what has been applied for, what projects are, in the town. We have a letter from the town saying there are no applications pending. Here's what should have happened. We should have said, no, there are no applications pending. At this time, we still don't have an executed power purchase agreement. We still don't have an application filed. We're in the pre-application phase. But nevertheless, this project is planned. So what we should have said is, no, there are no applications pending, but we have a conceptualized project. I think we effectively studied the impacts of a future project. I think we actually studied more area than we are planning to use, so it's maybe a little bit over abundance of caution because we did not have the site constrained. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. But that's not to say that we should, we should have had that conversation. So
Okay.
I agree with you in that fact.
So, the board will certainly, consider what you're asking us today. We'll take it up with our environmental staff and council. But I would just like to point out that it's been a month and a half since we approved that resolution requiring the supplemental, and it doesn't look like any positive steps were made towards that, and it's been a month and a half. So,
Yes, sir. We have been in a lot of discussions with the town, with staff, trying to understand what the best route forward for both of us would be. We wanna be your partner in this. We wanna make this abundantly clear, and I do appreciate your consideration.
thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I appreciate the opportunity to be heard today, but I think we would like to have future conversations with, like you're saying, with Jeff Seaman, with Dick Ehlers. I'd like Terry to work on a proposal, whether it's a scope. So this all came because I tried to start meeting with, we did start meeting, tried to come up with a scope of issues. The resolution puts it upon us to come up with a scope of issues. When we started discussing the scope of issues, we're coming up with the same issues that we've already studied. There's nothing new in this scope that was not included within the scope of the analysis that was done already. That's why we thought it'd be better to perhaps do a consistency analysis. Take the report that's already been provided, assume additional information, what's been discussed as what's been identified as newly discovered information, work that into the report that's already been done, and show that, and demonstrate that that's consistent with what we already provided you in our report and with the findings that have already been made. It's very difficult for us to scope a supplemental study that enumerates the same issues that we've already studied. So that's when we got into difficulty. I sat down with VHB, that's our environmental consultant, and we started discussing the concerns enumerated in the resolution. They are the same concerns that are listed in the report that's been completed. And it's on the same properties that were identified under the cumulative analysis that was included within that report. So we're just asking you to consider the possibility that our environmental consultant can work with the environmental consultant at the town to do some type of analysis that these issues enumerated in your resolution for supplemental have already been included, and that they've been addressed, and it's consistent with the study and the report and the findings already, the report already accepted by the board and the findings already made by the board. So that's all we're asking today. Terry is going to work with Jeff on that, and we're just asking you to give us that consideration. And I know it's been a month and a half, and we have been trying to come up with a scope of issues, because you put that upon us to come up with the scope. And the scope is the same scope as what we've studied already. So that's why we think it may be more appropriate for a consistency analysis rather than a supplemental. Terry, do you want to be heard any more on that, or? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public want to address the board?
Make a motion that we move the minutes of the November 1st, 2018 planning board meeting, so moved.
I'll second. Okay, motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 1st. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next date is December 6th, 7 PM. Motion to adjourn.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Right.